Yeah.
one like the rest of,
Yes.
like the
It's
cold,
cold.
really cold
Yeah.
beaches.
Yeah. It's cold outside, cold inside.
Yeah, I mean, it does warm up, but the 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 buildings aren't designed for heating.
Yes,
Anyway,
that's true. Hare Krishna. Anyway,
Hare
I hope you
Krishna.
get some warmth. Hare Krishna.
Thank you.
Hare Krishna. Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Jayam Vishnupad Paramahansa Parivrajakacharya Ashtottara Shata Shri Srimad A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada Ki Jai Anantakoti Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Jai Namacharya Haridas Thakur Ki Jai Prem Se Kaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shiva Shadi Gaur Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai Shri Shri Radha Krishna Gopa Gopinath Shama Kunda Radha Kunda Giri Govardhan Ki Jai Vrindavan Dham Ki Jai Navadip Dham Ki Jai Ganga Mayi Ki Jai Jamuna Mayi Ki Jai Bhakti Devi Ki Jai Tulsi Devi Ki Jai Samaveta Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai all glories to the assembled devotees, all glories to the assembled devotees, all glories to the assembled devotees. Gaur Premanande, Hari Hari Bol. Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna. Welcome everyone for Srimad Bhagavatam with His Holiness Jayadvaita Swami. It is Monday, December 9th, 2024 in New York. And tonight we're picking up with our reading in the fourth canto, 8th chapter. And someone, if they like, can remind me of the verse we left off on, because I don't have those notes in front of me yet, unfortunately. I'm on a bit of a delay. So we shall resume as soon as we determine what verse we're resuming with. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. And so it looks like we got up to verse number. We had lively discussions, and I'm still trying to find the verse numbers from our Friday session.
Saraswati is saying it's verse 30.
Verse 30. Thank you, Saraswati Mata. Yeah. Okay. So let's look at that. Makes sense? Yes. We'll start with that. Atamatro padishtena yogena varurutsasi yat prasadang savai pungsang duraradhyo mato mama. This is Narada Muni speaking to Dhruva Maharaj. Now you have decided to undertake the mystic process of meditation under the instruction of your mother just to achieve the mercy of the Lord. But in my opinion, such austerities are not possible for any ordinary man. It is very difficult to satisfy the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The process of bhakti yoga is simultaneously very difficult and very easy to perform. Sri Narada Muni, the Supreme Spiritual Master, is testing Dhruva Maharaj to see how determined he is to prosecute devotional service. This is the process of accepting a disciple. The great sage Narada has come to Dhruva under the direction of the Supreme Personality of Godhead just to initiate him. Yet, he is testing Dhruva's determination to execute the process. It is a fact, however, that for a sincere person, devotional service is very easy. But for one who is not determined and sincere, this process is very difficult. Om Jnana Timirantasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshur Unmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Vanchakalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha Patitanang Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasadi Gaura Bhaktivinoda. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Last we read text 29, which we can read just because it leads into today's verse, gives us an idea of where Narada Muni is coming from in his path of argument to Dhruva. The process of the Supreme Personality of Godhead is very wonderful. One who is intelligent should accept that process and be satisfied with whatever comes, favorable or unfavorable, by his supreme will. And we had some lively discussion on these points, so lively, in fact, that was the only verse that we read on Friday. And now we are brought to today. Now you have decided to undertake the mystic process of meditation under the instruction of your mother. So Narada Muni, as Prabhupada explained earlier, is empowered by the Lord to have equal opulence, you could say, to the Lord in the arena of understanding people's minds, past, present, and future. He was able to pick up on, without benefit of Google or any social media, exactly what's going on in Dhruva's house and the sort of conversations that are going on there. And the Lord sent him, as he says, as Prabhupada says in the purport, just to initiate him. But here we see that Narada is testing Dhruva Maharaj, testing his sincerity, testing his determination. And Prabhupada says this is the way that a prospective spiritual master needs to test a disciple to see how serious he is, because we often see that one may be a lot more eager to have a guru than he is to become a disciple, because that requires discipline, as the word would imply. And Narada is saying, this is going to be too hard. No ordinary person can do it. And he's trying to see if Dhruva can be dissuaded. And this is paradoxically what Maya Devi herself does to those who are aspirants in any path of progressive life, that she'll present, well, what about this? What about this? You should really consider this. You know, you've got some noble aims, but that's probably impractical, probably too hard. You're probably going to be uncomfortable. And who wants that? Wouldn't you rather just do something easy, normal, and reasonable? And so Narada is is adopting this tactic to see whether Dhruva Maharaj is going to come back with further arguments in favor of his prosecution of devotional life. I recall there was a lecture in which someone from the back of the crowd was asked Prabhupada, why is Maya so strong? And Prabhupada, without a moment's hesitation, just shot back very loudly, because your purpose is not strong. So this process of accepting a disciple apparently is somewhat like weeding out the men from the boys. Who is really serious and who's not? Because as he says here, if you're serious, then the process is easy. It's straightforward. You just follow, and Krishna helps those who help themselves. But if you're not serious, then you're going to be in for a very difficult ride, because Maya is always there, ready to give rationalizations and reasons why you should give up or do something easier or take a lesser route. But a sincere person has to be strong enough that whenever that voice comes, that they are able to tune that voice out by turning on the accelerator of devotional service. That's the only real means to progress and to bypass that what do you say, the devil's voice in your left ear. So I was looking in my phone, and so far I hadn't received any notice from Maharaj that he would not be attending. So maybe we should send him a note just in case he's in a different time zone, which he sometimes is. I think he did mention that by the 12th he was going to be in New York, and he was in Dubai, and it's a long way from Dubai to New York. So maybe he stopped in some interim place, and often his clock on his phone is not in sync with his computer clock. So I'm just going to send him a note right now, letting him know that we are here in case he's able to receive messages and can tune in with us. Meanwhile, if there are any comments, questions, please, anyone can go ahead. Let's see. Panchatattva Prabhu, you're more than welcome to field the comments in the chat box while I send Maharaj a note here. Vijay Krishna Prabhu is starting us off.
Jay Krishna Prabhu asks, how would you define a sincere person? Well, that word sincerity is used to describe all kinds of people with different purposes. I think I would suggest that a sincere person is going to have integrity. That their motivation is clear, and they're not hypocritical, and they're straightforward. That's, I mean, if we look at the dictionary definition of sincerity, we'll find something to that effect. That their purpose is very clear. They're dedicated to it, and they don't have ulterior motives. If someone has ulterior motives, that's a lack of sincerity. Hare Krishna. What do you say to that, Akendra Prabhu?
All good. I would abide by that and accept it. I don't think I can add anything to it. Actually, I was half sending a note to Maharaj, half listening to you. And when you half do something, you don't do it at all. So I apologize for my inattentiveness.
Harbo, I was thinking a sincere person would be eager to hear. Their eagerness is there. That's my humble opinion.
Yeah. What occurs to me is that in addition to what Yogananda Mata and Panchatattva Prabhu have said, sincere means you don't go away. It reminds me of Srila Bhakti Siddhanta's appraisal of a young Srila Prabhupada who was sitting in his audience at a festival and previous times, and Srila Bhaktisiddhanta noted that he was very keen to hear, and he says he likes to hear. He does not go away. So when we see that someone is sincere in their spiritual aspirations, the symptom of that is that they don't go away under any circumstances. They want to serve, they want to hear. Those are the symptoms that we tend to see, and in others and in ourselves as well. If we feel a lack of service mood or lack of desire to hear, then there's maybe something not quite right at that particular time with us. There's something more down here, maybe in addition to that. Ananta Shesha Prabhu says, a sincere person would say, I get to chant, as opposed to I have to chant. Good one. Thank you. And also,
the dictionary definition is free from pretense or deceit, proceeding from genuine feelings, not dishonest or hypocritical.
I'm also reminded of how Lord Krishna categorizes various personalities who approach him for whatever reason, whether they're in need of money or distressed or looking for the absolute truth or just curious. So the sincerity comes through in their tenaciousness to stay with that process of surrender, even if they get relief from whatever distress they want relief from. If they stick around and they get some reciprocation from Krishna from within that motivates them to stay with it, no matter, through as Saraswati Mata says, a sincere devotee would be in it for the long haul through thick and thin. She also says, pranams to all Vaishnavas. It seems like Narada is adopting reverse psychology tactics because Dhruva does not want to be, quote, ordinary person. Also, there are different degrees to satisfying the Lord, but having a desire to serve him is definitely a start. Yes, which reminds us of Ado, Shraddha, Tata, Sadhu, Sangha, that whole path starting from Shraddha or interest or faith that ends up at prema. If someone stays with it, they'll pass through all those various stages. Anartha Nivritti may be the chief and most longest lasting one for a lot of us. But yeah, that I think would comprehend what she would call the long haul here. Yeah, a desire to serve him is definitely a start. And like I was saying, that desire to serve may come from other motives. It may be mixed with other things. You may come to the temple and see, whoa, there's a lot of attractive people there. And that might be your motivating, or, hey, the food is good. And that might be your motivating factor. And you may have all kinds of ulterior motives for coming, but if you keep coming, that be a sign of sincerity. Praveen Krishna Prabhu says, someone told me sincere means he is practicing since years. Good. Hare Krishna. And anything else on this verse before?
I just want to say that one can actually be sincere and have material desires and so forth, but the qualification of his sincerity is he's not masking up, he's not pretending to be something else. He recognizes his position, and he's approaching his spiritual master humbly and seeking the guidance of senior devotees so that he can make progress, or she. That person is also sincere. It doesn't necessarily mean, oh, this person's, he's materially contaminated, he can't be sincere. There's no way he can be sincere. No, it's not. It depends upon one's truthfulness, honesty, openness. Those things are very important. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Yes, and those qualities tend to come out in the process of purification. One's self-awareness should increase as a result of practicing devotional life, you should, in the process of especially anartha nivritti, one will see one's own faults. One will see one's own tendency towards hypocrisy, or one will see one's own ulterior motives for what they are. But without coming to the process, those things will remain buried. Without that cheto darpana marjanam, you don't get any of the bhava maha davagni nirapanam. These things just, Krishna will allow us to remain covered as long as we want to be, really. But that process of devotional service really tends to boil the milk boil the butter, so that the impurities rise to the top, so that they can be scooped off by the spiritual master or whomever is attentive. Yeah. All right. Perhaps we could move on here. I'm not seeing Maharaj showing up yet, but I did send him a note so he knows that we are here, and for whatever reason, we must carry on. Hare Krishna. Panchatattva Prabhu, you're welcome to read our next verse if you so desire. It's 31.
31. Munya padavim yasya nisangenoru janma bihi navidu mrigayantopi tivra yoga samadhina. Narada Muni continued. After trying this process for many, many births and remaining unattached to material contamination, placing themselves continually in trance and executing many types of austerities, many mystic yogis were unable to find the end of the path of God realization. Text 32. Ato nivartatam esha yabhandas tava nishpalaha yatishyati bhavan kale shreyasam samupastite. Translation. For this reason, my dear boy, you should not endeavor for this. It will not be successful. It is better that you go home. When you're grown up by the mercy of the Lord, you will get a chance for these mystic performances. At that time, you may execute this function. Purport. Generally, a thoroughly trained person takes to spiritual perfection at the end of his life. According to the Vedic system, therefore, life is divided into 4 stages. In the beginning, one becomes a brahmachari, a student who studies Vedic knowledge under the authoritative guidance of a spiritual master. He then becomes a householder and executes household duties according to the Vedic process. Then the householder becomes a vanaprastha, and gradually, when he is mature, he renounces household life and vanaprastha life also, and takes to sannyas, completely devoting himself to devotional service. Generally, people think that childhood is meant for enjoying life by engaging oneself in sports and play. Youth is meant for enjoying the company of young girls, and when one becomes old, at the time of death, then he may try to execute devotional service or a mystic yoga process. But this conclusion is not for devotees who are actually serious. The great sage Narada is instructing Dhruva Maharaj just to test him. Actually, the direct order is that from any point of life, one should begin rendering devotional service. But it is the duty of the spiritual master to test the disciple, to see how seriously he desires to execute devotional service. Then he may be initiated. Namo Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prashtaya Bhutale Gurudasa Jayadvaita Swami Namine Om Ajnana Tamarandasya Gananjana Salakaya Chakshum Nitanyena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. So, the very first instruction that Prahlad Maharaj gives his classmates, as described in the 7th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, is Kamaram Achere Pragya Dharma Bhagavataniha. From childhood, from the moment of understanding the urgency. But he says specifically, Kamaram Achere Pragya, should be inquiring about this. He goes on to explain that the human form of life is just like every other form of life. It's temporary, but you get the opportunity to advance in Krishna consciousness, to develop God realization, and to go back home, back to Godhead. And you don't get that in other births. So another 5-year-old, several cantos on, at least 3 cantos on, is giving this formula for our current 5-year-old Dhruva Maharaj. And Narada Muni, of course, great spiritual master among spiritual masters, knows all this perfectly well, but he's testing the resolve of this boy who's already surprised him by his tenacity, his determination. And as Akendra Prabhu has mentioned, he's testing him. He's pressing on him to see if he's actually truly as determined as he appears to be. And he even goes to the extent of saying, there are all these mystic yogis who have failed on this path. They practiced austerities. They did this process for many births, remaining free of material contamination, and they weren't successful. So why should someone like you, just a mere child, engage in this path of mystic yoga, really of devotional service, and expect a better outcome? You're unqualified by your age. It could be said you're unqualified by your varna. You're a kshatriya. He's already mentioned how Brahmins, they do this, that, the other thing. He's just saying, no, you're not going to be able to do this. Forget it. But we'll see in coming pages that Dhruva Maharaj he just isn't having it. He's bound and determined, and therefore Narada Muni will give him further instruction. But at this point, he's testing him. Prabhupada mentions in the purport that there are steps that one normally goes through. In the normal run of things, one starts out, as a brahmachari. That's the normal run of things that isn't very present in Kali Yuga. One has brahmachari training and then goes into grihastha life. From there, advances to vanaprastha life and on to sannyas. In other words, there's path that's expected for most people to traverse, but it's not without training. Those brahmacharya years are very important for establishing spiritual discipline, a relationship with the spiritual master, an understanding of what's to be done and what's not to be done. And then one can pass through the grihastha ashram in a respectable way, and in a way that fulfills all of his duties to his family and society, and at the same time cultivate his inner Krishna consciousness, so that when it's time and age has reached its apex, 50 years or older, and it goes on to vanaprastha ashram, and then from there possibly sannyas. The main point being that one has to become renounced and fully absorbed in Krishna consciousness in order to make a successful end of this particular life. And Prahlad Maharaj is saying, don't wait till then. Don't wait till you're 50. Don't wait till you're 60. Don't wait till you're 25 or 30. Right now, he's telling the boys in his class, they're his age. He's telling them, be serious now. Don't wait. Pretty extraordinary bunch of 5-year-olds, it seems to me. When I was 5, I couldn't imagine thinking in any way, shape, or form like that. But then again, I didn't have the association of Narada Muni. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank you so much, Prabhu. The Saraswati Mata comments here that Narada Muni himself was 5, the same age as Dhruva, when he seriously engaged in bhakti, in pure devotee.
That's a good point.
I was like you. Yeah. I was noticing how Prabhupada says that generally people think that when you're old at the time of death, then you try to execute some mystic service. But this conclusion, he says, is not for devotees who are actually serious. It doesn't matter what age, the time is now. There's no time like the present. If you have that inclination, you should be encouraged. Otherwise, the tendency of the conditioned souls, yeah, later, I'll do it later, later. Why now? I'm busy now. I got other things to do. Oh, those other things are more important.
This this life is, what is it? In Govinda's song, it's tottering like water on a lotus leaf. At any moment can slide off. And we see it. We've had god brothers and god sisters who have passed on already. We're occasionally shocked by a devotee leaving in a car accident or something. All of a sudden, someone we saw just the other day is now gone. So, we think about it for a few days and become very, very serious and contemplative, and I've got to get more serious about Krishna consciousness. But then the shock wears off. We become a little forgetful, a little numb again. Thank you very much, Maya. But we have to be aware of the fact that this life is very flickering. This particular body, it won't last. And it doesn't always last for someone who's 5 or 6 years old, let alone 70. Hare Krishna.
All right, Krishna. And as that old song goes, someday never comes. Yeah, you've brought up the notion of Smashan Vairagya. Yes, Anantashesha Prabhu and I are on the same page there. Yes, we've become very grave, very serious, very philosophical, very contemplative when we see somebody else, dead or dying or being burned. But then, I've got stuff to do.
Yeah, but the Irish, they just throw a wake and have a party. They push it out of the mind right away.
Yeah. Vijay Krishna Prabhu says, to say that the direct order is that from any point of life, one should begin rendering devotional service reminds me of the prayers of the child inside the womb. Good, yes. So even, what to speak of Kamar Acharet Pragyo, even an embryo should start performing devotional, service as early as possible. No time like the present, as it is said. Burijan Prabhu once told me, go as far and as fast as you can in Krishna consciousness. So in other words, life is going to throw at you innumerable obstacles, innumerable distractions from the path of bhakti. But if you have some energy, if you have some inclination, go as far and as fast as you can in devotional life. Because you don't know at what point your pursuit may be for reasons beyond your control, arrested, paused, derailed, or whatever. So go as far and as fast as you can. Anantashesha Prabhu says, when I came back from the hospital after almost dying 3 times, I had a heavy sense of detachment to everything, which soon faded away. Hare Krishna. I don't think it's completely faded away, Prabhu. Panchatattva Prabhu, please go ahead.
It's so nice to be in such a wide movement where you have so many examples of good devotees and devotees that have taken, who normally you'd see in their apparently materially encumbered position, where they would have Parkinson's or suffered an accident or been partially paralyzed by a stroke, but they're still engaged in devotional service with every breath. And so if they can do it when they're practically handicapped materially in so many ways, what to speak of us who are in somewhat better health, we should mark their example and say, okay, I'm going to devote my full energy.
Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna, and thank you. Any other questions or comments on this one before we move forward? certainly Maharaj would have something to say here on this, the natural arc of one's life. All right. Yovananandamata, would you like to read our next text? 33.
Okay. All right, here we go. Text 833. Yasya yadaiva vihitam satena sukadukhayo atmanam tosayandehe tasmasa param richati. Translation. One should try to keep himself satisfied in any condition of life, whether distress or happiness, which is offered by the Supreme Will. A person who endures in this way is able to cross over the darkness of nescience very easily. Purport. Material existence consists of pious and impious fruitive activities. As long as one is engaged in any kind of activity other than devotional service, it will result in the happiness and distress of this material world. When we enjoy life in so-called material happiness, it is to be understood that we are diminishing the resultant actions of our pious activities, and when we are put into suffering, it is to be understood that we are diminishing the resultant actions of our impious activities. Instead of being attached to the circumstantial happiness and distress resulting from pious or impious activities, if we want to get out of the clutches of this nescience, then whatever position we're put in by the will of the Lord, we should accept. Thus, if we simply surrender unto the Supreme Personality of Godhead, we shall get out of the clutches of this material existence. Jai. Kendra Prabhu, would you like to say something?
Only after you, I was going to say.
Well, I was thinking of when we're suffering, we're diminishing the actions of our impious activities and vice versa. It's so true, but it seems like we're on this wheel of going around and around, creating this karma around and around. And then when we take up the spiritual life, all of this wouldn't mean anything. Okay.
Yeah, no, thank you very much. I also appreciated that point here. When we're suffering, we're diminishing our impious activities. When we're so-called enjoying, we're diminishing the actions of our pious activities. So next time someone asks you how you're doing, you can say either, well, I'm diminishing the reactions to my sinful activities, or whatever it may be, because that's the fact. And people do tend to want to try to counteract these things, and then they put themselves, as you've said already, on that wheel of trying to like improve this situation and counteract this situation. You know, that just keeps you going and going. But Anantashesha Prabhu brings up the salient question: how many of us can think that way while suffering? Yeah, well, that's the test, isn't it? To be able to think that way while suffering. Hare Krishna. Yeah, Panchatattva Prabhu posts a most relevant scriptural reference in this regard. Tatenu kampham susamikshamano punjana evatma kritam vipakam vidvagva purbir vididhan namaste jiveta yo mukti pade sadayabhak. My dear Lord, one who earnestly waits for you to bestow your causeless mercy upon him, all the while patiently suffering the reactions of his past misdeeds and offering you respectful obeisances with his heart, words, and body, is surely eligible for liberation, for it has become his rightful claim.
The purport, it really nicely explains how it's the devotee is in meditation on this fact, and that he's actually seeing his trouble as the Lord's mercy granted to him to help purify him of his tendency to enjoy matter. It's really that's really the key. That purport helps you understand that verse. Otherwise, what's the point of suffering? You know, okay, it's my past reactions, but gee whiz. But it's actually a meditation. It's actually a loving appreciation of Krishna that the devotee enters into. It's a pretty extraordinary purport.
Yeah, and it's an extraordinary mindset that is being spelled out there, because as I was reading the translation to that verse, I got to the part where it says, waiting for you to bestow your causeless mercy upon him. That the tendency is so strong in the conditioned soul to equate the idea of causeless mercy with, when am I going to be able to enjoy? When am I going to be able to enjoy? I'm not enjoying right now. I'm suffering it right now. That mercy means I'm going to be enjoying soon, right? I'll be getting some happiness soon, right? Rather than, as you say, or as Maharaj highlighted in a very recent class, that we may think that for Krishna to be merciful to us means that he's going to give us what we want, but often what we want is not good for us. So just as responsible parents don't just let their children do whatever they want, sometimes they take away things that they think they want because they're harmful, like matches, knives, and other objects of destruction. So yeah, yes, Praveen Prabhu says, quote, position the Lord puts us in, when to know that this is the Lord's plan and just stick to it, or should I endeavor to change the situation to better my devotional service? Panchatattva Prabhu, would you like to field that question?
I think first we should look at this particular paragraph in the purport for that very important verse that Lord Brahma speaks. He says, the first paragraph is there, and he talks about the devotee's eligibility by following the regular principles of bhakti yoga. He automatically becomes eligible to receive the mercy of the Lord, in the same way that a legitimate son has to simply remain alive to gain an inheritance from his father. But he goes on. The word susamikshamana indicates that a devotee earnestly awaits the mercy of the Supreme Lord even while suffering the painful effects of previous sinful activities. Lord Krishna explains in Bhagavad Gita that a devotee who fully surrenders unto him is no longer liable to suffer the reactions of his previous karma. However, because in his mind, a devotee may still maintain the remnants of his previous sinful mentality, the Lord removes the last vestiges of the enjoying spirit by giving his devotee punishments that may sometimes resemble sinful reactions. The purpose of the entire creation of God is to rectify the living entity's tendency to enjoy without the Lord, and therefore the particular punishment given for a sinful activity is specifically designed to curtail the mentality that produced the activity. And it goes on like that. Although a devotee has surrendered to the Lord's devotional service until he's completely perfect in Krishna consciousness, he may maintain a slight inclination to enjoy the false happiness of this world. The Lord therefore creates a particular situation to eradicate this remaining enjoying spirit. And it explains further, this actually isn't really a karmic reaction. It's the Lord's special mercy for inducing his devotee to make spiritual advancement, to give up his enjoying mentality. It's a really nice purport. If you're ever like feeling really distressed, but you're practicing Krishna consciousness and trying, as we talked about, sincerely, then meditate on this purport, because that's the actual situation. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
But what was the question was? Oh, when do you know stick to it, or should I endeavor to change the situation to better my devotional service? Depends on it depends. If you're going to like change your situation wholesale, you better consult saintly persons or your spiritual master. to make sure it's not your mind just playing tricks or, But oftentimes when we're faced with distressful conditions, we're talking here about like some sinful reactions. You can become diseased, you become uh, disturbed in so many ways without even the help of others. The material world is like that. So there's a way to look at it. And this is the actual way. This is the truth of the matter for someone who's actually following the regular principles sincerely. This is the truth of the matter. And it's actually, in one sense, very, very encouraging because you realize this will pass also.
Thank you very much. And Praveen Krishna Prabhu brings up a good point here, or maybe in the form of a question or a point of argument. He says Prabhupada had decided to leave the fight for the League of Devotees, which he started in Jhansi, but he stuck with fighting for the Juhu land. I was thinking about this also. At the time that he was attempting to get the League of Devotees off the ground, he was essentially alone. He didn't have any committed followers there. He had some sympathizers, but nobody was willing to really give up anything to further his mission. People were working jobs, going to school, etc. And they liked Prabhupada, but they weren't surrendered to him. And also there was governmental forces against him. There were economic forces against him. He had no means at that time. He was just living on that property at the charity of the local authorities, and he understood that somebody else wanted that whole complex for other purposes, namely the governor's wife. So he understood that, I've got no followers, I've got no means, the government is against me, economics are against me. What he didn't see that he had any other options but to move on from that service. Whereas when the time came to acquire and develop the Juhu property, he had had great success in America and Europe, and now he had started his mission in India. He was getting good response from government leaders, from business leaders, from very influential people. So there was just this one guy who was trying to stand in Prabhupada's way, and he was trying to exercise his influence to stop the devotees, to stop Prabhupada. And Prabhupada at that point wouldn't have it. He just wouldn't have it at all. He had already crossed the ocean. He had had two heart attacks just on the boat, and he wasn't going to let anything stop him at that point. And even his followers, many of them couldn't understand Prabhupada's determination. Why do you want to have a temple in the jungle when there's nobody around there? But Prabhupada was fixed and determined, and he was not going to be moved. And as we see, the result is glorious. Yes. Panchatattva Prabhu says, I suspect that Srila Prabhupada was getting indications from Krishna, stand and fight. Yes, so the purport Panchatattva Prabhu was referring to, for those who may have missed that, was Bhagavatam 10:14:8. And yes, as Panchatattva Prabhu says, Prabhupada had his team, he had his army. Yes. And I missed a comment before from Saraswati Mata, who said, the first thing my father said to me after a particularly painful operation was that I am suffering from my past sinful activities. I was at first quite upset at his attempt to, quote, comfort me, but later on could see how true he spoke. Yes. Yes. All right, we're getting close to the top of the hour, and it seems like there's, let's see, looking at this next verse. Oh, there's a significant purport to this next verse. And if things go on as they usually do, we'll have a lot to say about that. So let's pause here and move on to Kirtan. And let's see. Of course, we'd love if someone would like to volunteer to lead Kirtan. Otherwise, we can appoint someone or insist that someone leads kirtan, but it's always nice to have volunteers. Hare Krishna. But of course, there are never volunteers. That's the problem.
Vijay Krishna.
Okay, Ananta Shesha Prabhu is nominating that he's volunteering you, Vijay Krishna Prabhu, to lead the kirtan. Do you accept?
I second that nomination.
So we'll have to insist
Yeah.
then.
Yeah, Sikandra Prabhu. Can you hear me?
Certainly we can.
Thank you very much. You're most kind. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Jayam Vishnupad Paramahansa Purivrajacacharya Ashtotar Sata Shri Srimad A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada Ki Jai Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Jai Namacharya Haridas Thakur Ki Jai Prem Se Kaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaur Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai Shri Shri Radha Krishna Gopa Gopinath Shyamakunda Radha Kunda Giri Govardhan Ki Jai Shri Vrindavan Dham Ki Jai Shri Navadip Dham Ki Jai Ganga Mayi Ki Jai Jamuna Mayi Ki Jai Bhakti Devi Ki Jai Tulsi Devi Ki Jai Samaveta Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. Gaur Premanande, Hari Hari Bol. Thank you, Vijay Krishna Prabhu. Thank you, Ananta Shesha Prabhu, for the nomination. Roy Gupta Prabhu says, Jai. Thank you to all. Praveen Krishna Prabhu says, thank you, with a clapping hands emoji. Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Holiness Jayadvaita Swami and friends ki jai.
Jai.
Thank you, everybody.
Hi, Bo.
Samaveta Bhaktavrinda ki
Turbo.
jai.
Jai.
Thank you, everyone, for being here. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hope to see
Thank,
you
thank
all.
you for having us, Kendra Prabhu. You're most kind.
No. All right.
Hare Krishna. Hopefully Maharaj will be able to join us. I'll see if I hear back from him, and we can all earnestly await his return. Hare Krishna.